Since ancient times, soldiers have been using symbols on their shields and armors to identify each other in the heat of battle. With time, these emblems started being used outside of battlefields and evolved in ever more complex and sometimes cryptic forms, creating what is known today as armory or heraldry. Somehow, this cultural practice survived through the centuries, until the fateful day when we finally put emblems on giant robots. This video is the unplanned second part of the one I previously did about the origin of the names used in Armored Core 6. This time I'm going to focus on the ACs, the pilots and their emblems, which I found more often than not are intended to be deciphered together. I'll give my best shot at interpreting the emblems based on the information I found, but I should tell you right away that a few designs still left me clueless, while for others there are many possible explanations. Let's have a look then, starting with the Vespers. Locksmith has a hand holding a key. We know precious little about Freud. He's an unannounced human, unlike every other elite corporation pilot. He's the top pilot in the arena and the brute force of Arquebus.
That's what we have V1 for.
And boy, he loves to fight.
No, more. Get up. The fun's only just begun.
I like how his biography mentions the incremental improvements he makes on his AC. Unlike any other Vesper, who all use Arquebus AC parts, he is not above using parts of the rival corporation's Balam in his build. One interpretation I could see for his emblem is that he will make keys to open doors, as in creating an AC build that will accomplish the mission. That, and his namesake Sigmund Freud was born in a locksmith house. As for Snail, just like his name, his AC and emblem are also a mystery. Why is it called Open Faith? Well, the interesting thing is, the second word of the AC name, as written in the original Japanese, Feizu, could be transliterated as either faith or face, and the emblem is literally an open face. So could this be the result of a translation oversight? It's a possibility, and as for what will be the meaning of the open face, I'll leave the interpretations to you. Also, as to underline Snail's sense of superiority and self-importance, his AC is almost entirely made of parts by the Arquebus Advanced Development Division. O'Keefe's AC is called Barren Flower, and flowers were a recurring subject in the paintings of his namesake, Georgia O'Keeffe. But the emblem also resembles an eye, which is significant as O'Keeffe is the Special Intelligence Officer of the Vespers and previously worked as a spy. Well, actually, he never stopped being a spy, as all along he has been a double agent for All Mind inside Arquebus. This is foreshadowed by his AC using All Mind's parts. Rusty's Steel Haze is probably named after the extreme speed of the AC, and we already talked in the past video about Rusty's 2 emblems and 2 ACs. This time, however, I want to focus on how the build of Steel Haze Ortus by itself narrates a background story about war and espionage between the corporations. We learn in a log left by independent mercenaries that they think Furlong are just pretending to be neutral and will never make a move out in the open. But what are they planning exactly? The first clue is this broken log, which probably reads something like, "When the time comes, Furlong will share technology with Elcano. You must stay hidden until then." This is a message directed to Rusty, ordering him to stay hidden within the ranks of the Vespers until the time Steel Haze Ortus is ready. A messenger from the Liberation Front is later intercepted while trying to let Rusty know that his new AC is almost ready, and he doesn't need to fight 61 on Arquebus orders anymore.
You're strong, a threat, buddy. There's no graver threat than power without purpose.
The second clue is in the bows arsenal, where we learn that Rubicon-based bows was financially supporting Elcano, as that's the only way we Rubiconians stand a chance. And finally, we learn from All Mind's brief of Steel Haze Ortus that Elcano has stolen Arquebus technology and used it to develop a new model. The final results of Elcano's backdoor deals are ultimately revealed in the parts for Steel Haze Ortus. The Alba head and arms utilize Furlong technology. The core and the legs have been retro-engineered from Schneider's ACs, which is a subsidiary of Arquebus, hence the stolen Arquebus technology. And the Hokushi generator has been developed in tandem with bows. The minor corporations, while feigning neutrality, have been supporting the Rubicon Liberation Front behind the scenes through Elcano, and Steel Haze Ortiz is the result of their effort to undermine both Balam and Arquebus. And before letting Rusty go, I wanted to point out its suspicious placement in the arena. Rusty is clearly a better pilot than almost anyone else on Rubicon, but he doesn't want to blow his cover yet, and his placement as 9B is probably a cheeky reference to 9 Ball, the legendary final boss of the original Armored Core. Armored Core 4 Answer, the last installment before 6 to feature an arena mode, also had the legendary White Glint, possibly the strongest pilot in the game, at position 9 in the arena. Right, let's proceed with Hawkins and his AC Reconfig. The emblem and the name suggest some sort of transhumanist theme, and Hawkins' biography is all about his 7th generation augmentation surgery and the lives tragically lost to the previous generations. The same general theme applies to Matterlink and her AC infection. Matterlink is a product of 8th generation surgery, bringing about a new age of augmentation, and the emblem, showing a mechanical mosquito infecting people in a row, possibly represent these relatively safer augmentation surgeries becoming commonplace among pilots. Swinburne's emblem depicts a lobotomy, which I find interesting, together with the name Guidance. We learn during the game that Arquebus prisoners of war are sent to the Re-Education Center, which is basically a euphemism for being brainwashed into serving Arquebus. This fate ultimately befalls Handler Walter during the Liberator of Rubicon ending, even if the re-education is not entirely successful with him.
The corporation's orders. No. My friend's mission.
Anyway, Swinburne is the character that mentions re-education the most, threatening 621 with it various times while battling him.
I'll have you all sent for re-education. Snail will be pleased to have you.
With a little reprogramming, you'll make a fine soldier. To the re-education center with you. Ta-ta.
The ironic part is that if we decide to accept his bribe and spare him, Snail sends him to be re-educated.
Swinburne's shameful conduct has dishonored the Vespers. He has now been sent for re-education under the orders of V2 Snail.
Pater's AC name, Dual Nature, refers to his split personalities. Both times we meet him, he will suddenly switch from weeping over his dead comrades
No! V5, come in!
to gloating over his battlefield promotions.
Hawkins' number is mine. Oh, how I've waited for this. Once I make sure Snail's dead, I'll be the only one left to carry on the glory of Arquebus!
Interestingly, Pater is a product of Generation 10 surgery, the culmination of efforts to preserve the patient's humanity, so his augmentation is not to blame for its psychopathic traits. Let's move on to Balam. The names are mostly easier to understand when compared to Arquebus, and the emblems all feature animals. Michigan's liger tail is represented in his emblem by a liger, a hybrid between a lion and a tiger, which is depicted in the typical heraldic passant pose. Interestingly, his liger has 5 legs. The AC liger tail has 4 legs and 2 arms, so maybe the 5 legs plus the weaponized tail are supposed to represent the 6 limbs of the AC? A similar idea is behind the logo of the historical Italian oil company Eni, a 6-legged dog in which the 6 legs represent the 4 wheels of a car plus the 2 legs of the driver. Nile's Deep Down has 2 whales diving deep, and, well, I honestly have no idea what it might mean. Much as Freud and Snail are respectively the brain and the brawn of the Vespers, Nile is, as Walter puts it, the brain to Michigan's muscle, and the emblem could be a reference to his past rivalry with Michigan, as per Nile's biography. Or someone must have really liked this video of a humpback whale called Nile and her calf, and decided they were too cute not to put them on the emblem. But let me know if you have any better ideas. Li Long has a Chinese name, just like its pilot, and it means carp dragon. The name and the emblem refers to the Chinese myth of the Dragon Gate, where a carp that succeeds in ascending a waterfall is rewarded by being transformed into a dragon. The word Li Long does not appear in Chinese dictionaries, but became popular with the Pokemon Gyarados, whose Chinese name is Bao Li Long, or Violent Carp Dragon. Volta's cannon head alludes to his tank AC armed with explosive weapons, and another emblem with an insect theme is that of Iguazu's Headbringer. It's a nice touch how the friendship between Volta and Iguazu is represented with both emblems being insect-themed, and it also ties nicely into Balam parts being named after entomologists. And have you noticed that Headbringer is the only red gun that follows Michigan color scheme? Maybe that's Iguazu's way of showing respect to Michigan, despite how much he talks about hating him. And finally we have Red's Hermit. Its emblem depicts an adorable hermit crab, with the tank gun representing the bazooka in his build. But the AC name assumes a very sad connotation when, in New Game Plus 2, you realize that Red is the only red gun left alive on Rubicon.
Commander Michigan, everyone! They're dead! Because of you, Gun 13!
For the Rubicon Liberation Front, we already talked in the first video about Asterix and Shinobi. I just wanted to point out how Rokumonsen is one of the only 3 human pilots to use all mind parts, the other 2 being Sulla and O'Keefe. We know that these 2 have been working with All Mind, but nothing of the sort is mentioned regarding Rokumonsen. Maybe he might have worked for All Mind in the past? There's no such mystery instead behind Index Dunam and his AC burn pickaxe. The emblem design is exceedingly obvious, and it's about Dunam being a construction worker, as reflected in his arena rank. Little Ziyi is another Chinese named pilot, and Yueyu means leaping fish as shown in the emblem. In Chinese, the expression leaping fish is famously used in a common proverb. The ocean is vast enough to allow fish to leap freely. The sky is high enough to allow birds to fly freely. I mention this for 2 reasons. First, this is a proverb about freedom, which ties into Little Z being imprisoned when we help her escape during the prisoner's rescue mission. And secondly, the parallel between fish and birds is really interesting because after being orphaned, Little Z has been adopted by Middle Flatwell, whose AC is definitely bird-themed. Tsubasa means wing in Japanese, and the emblem reminds me a lot of the cover of the book Jonathan Livingston Seagull. The name is justified as Tsubasa is the lightest and most energy-efficient AC amongst the arena pilots, perfect for flying around like a bird. And as for Freddy's candle ring, the emblem is literally a ring-shaped candle. The ring is part of Freddy's name, and I believe that the candle might be a reference to his spiritual nature and monk-like aloofness, as we are told in his biography. RAD has only 4 pilots. We already talked about how Carla's full course is named after her meal-inspired loadout, and the emblem depicts a spider eating back its web, which is a really metal way to depict a meal. But I think the emblem might also refer to the possibility of Carla being Assistant Number 2, one of the original researchers who started exploiting coral on Rubicon. If that's the case, Carla's work as an overseer, trying to eliminate coral once and for all, can be seen as her trying to dispose of her past work, much like the spider in the emblem. Cattu's Circus name goes well with its gaudy color scheme, and the emblem represents its long-range missile-based weapon loadout, as you would know if you faced him and Carla aboard Xylem. But the name is also an homage to Japanese animator Ichiro Itano. He worked on anime series like Gundam and Macross, and his style of depicting highly acrobatic action scenes with a huge barrage of moving missiles is known among fans as the Itano Circus. Rammi's Mad Stomp has quite a straightforward emblem, and Rammi is as mad as they come. But despite the name, Mad Stomp never uses boost kicks, despite being armed with only short-range weaponry. Mad and stupid. Another certifiable crazy is Brute, the owner of Milk Tooth. I honestly have no clue regarding where the name comes from, but I did notice that the skull in his emblem has 2 rows of teeth, like X-Ray of Kids, where both sets of milk teeth and adult teeth are present at the same time. Next are a few ACs that are not featured in the arena. The first is Kate Markson's Transcriber. I love the symbolism behind both the AC name and the emblem, and they only appear in the Obstruct the Mandatory Inspection mission briefing. The AC frame is entirely made up of All Mind parts, and that's because Kate Markson doesn't exist. It's just All Mind behind a false identity, which ties into the name Transcriber, one that writes down what someone else is saying. The emblem clearly resembles the All Might logo, but it's shaped like the tip of a fountain pen, in reference to the name. Then there's IBC03 HAL 826, piloted by handler Walter. The name probably stands for Ibis Coral 3, the third and last of the Ibis series, and even though there's no way to know for sure, I like the theory that HAL might be the name of Assistant Number 1, Walter's father. Walter's emblem is heavily featured during the game, and I love how it matches the Overseer symbol, which in turn is an inversion of All Might's logo. Now a quiz. Which emblem is the first one that you can see when starting the game? The answer is Air's emblem, which appears during the first loading screen. The emblem represents what Air is, a coral wave mutation, and my interpretation of her AC name is that just as an echo is a reflection of a wave on a surface, the AC echo is the reflection of the wave mutation Air, through which she can act in the real world. For the final part of the video, let's have a look at the independent mercenaries. Sulla's entangle is depicted as three serpents swallowing each other, and the colors of the three serpents perfectly mirror the color of the AC. A possible interpretation is that the snakes symbolize the fratricidal fate of Sulla. As a first-generation enhanced human, he is known to have killed other augmented hounds before meeting 61, and now lives only for the hunt. Now, I have no idea what's going on with the emblem of Cold Cold's AC Dead Sled, but I love it. It's inspired by heraldic standard depicting a sinister creature. It has a lion's tail, human hands holding a sword, wheels, and a flame-breathing skull for a head. I can see some symbolism for an armored core here, a deadly weapon of war made up of human and machine. Cold Cold's main occupation is assassination after all, and Dead Sled is a slang term for a hearse. Nozak's Bitter Promise is probably named after his owner's bad habit of taking on debts that he never intends to repay, but I think something interesting is going on with its emblem. It depicts a figure with two weapons, but they do not match the weapons that Bitter Promise uses. The weapons resemble a laser blade and a Karasawa rifle, but they don't perfectly match any current or past armored core weapon. However, the emblem is a very close match for the weapons used by Reconfig, V5 Hawkins AC, as he is the only pilot in the game to use an energy rifle and laser blade combination. So, this is what happens if we try swapping the emblems between the two pilots. The AC's color scheme matches. Hawkins' emblem seems to go together a bit better with Bitter Promise's weapons, and it also fits well with Nozak's habit of always buying the latest technology for his AC. Given all the clues, I think it's possible that the emblems were originally designed this way and swap around later in development, maybe to better fit the Vespers aesthetic or for other reasons entirely. And finally, we have the last three ACs, part of the Branch group. Both Amber Ox's name and the name of its pilot Chartreuse seem to reference colors. Chartreuse is a French liqueur that comes in both a green and a yellow variety, just like the colors of the AC, and the name eventually became associated with different shades of greenish yellow. Amber is also a color, a shade of brown that can be approximated by mixing the previous two colors. And the Ox probably refers to the sheer weight of the AC. Chartreuse is the only pilot who uses the massive VE-42 legs, and she possibly stole the designs herself from the Arquebus Advanced Development Division. Aster Crown's emblem has quite the noble history behind it. It can be found in Claude Pardin's Devises heroïques, the earliest known collection of heraldic devices, also known as badges or emblems, first printed in 1551. The devices were used as a mark of ownership by the nobility, and every device has an associated motto, which in this case is Monstrant Regibus Astra Viam. The star shows the way to the kings. King being Aster Crown's pilot, and Aster meaning star in Greek. And last but not least, it's Nightfall, piloted by Raven. I already talked in the last video about the name Vesper, Nightfall and the Dawn theme associated with Rusty. What I can add is that Raven is the name associated one way or another with every player character in the entirety of the Armored Core series. Here, 61 initially steals his call sign and a ruined version of his emblem. But Raven, it's more than a call sign, it's a title, passed down by generations of mercenaries, and when we finally see the original Raven emblem, This is beautifully referenced in the image of the raven plucking a feather from a dead companion, as if inheriting their will. And before closing this video, I have kind of a crazy theory regarding why this group of mercenaries is called Branch. It's a bit off, but do follow me. Branch sets the plot of the game in motion. They are the group responsible for leaking the information that the coral is still alive on Rubicon, and they attack Station 31, the very same station we fight either Air or All Mind on, thus weakening the closure system and possibly allowing us to reach Rubicon in the first place. If you watched my previous video, I put forward the idea that the Rubicon Liberation Front logo might depict the biblical Noah, as supported by the names used by Father Dolmayan and his AC. In the book of Genesis, Noah in its ark needs to know whether the waters subsided after the great flood, and so he sends 2 birds to scout for dry land, a dove and, before that, a raven. Rubicon 3 suffered something akin but opposite to a flood, the fires of Ibis, which all but eradicated the coral. But just like the flood eventually ended and land started to emerge again, so the fires ended and the coral started to propagate anew, which is the message that Branch sent out. What message is sent out to Noah then, to let him know that the flood ended and that the land is emerging again? The dove delivered this message, and it came in the form of an olive branch. As I said, these are just some of the possible interpretations of the emblems and names used. There is an undeniable charm to From Software way of storytelling, much of which is to be found in the intended vagueness and openness to interpretation of the lore elements. The best thing about it, if you ask me, is the way it pushes players to come together as a community to find the meaning behind these clues. And that's also what makes putting together these videos so much fun. So please, do let me know what you think I got right, what I got wrong, what your interpretation is. Thank you so much for watching. Bye bye.